Can you move at all?
I can't move.
Wow, how your leg is all the way up there?
Understand me. Listen, brother.
All right, I can't move you, so I have to, hold on, I'm going to have to go get an ambulance.
Listen, no.
Huh?
Yes, but understand.
Go ahead.
I fall. I cannot move my arms.
All right, do not move. I can see moving your arm.
No.
Before I was a criminal defense attorney, I wore a badge. I have sat in the front of that van. I have made that exact drive. And what you just heard is the sound of a man finding out his body has stopped working, while the people responsible for him decide whether to believe him. His name is Richard Cox. Everyone calls him Randy. On June 19th, 2022, he was arrested in New Haven, Connecticut, and put in the back of a police transport van. For what it is worth, every charge against Randy Cox was dismissed 4 months later. But I am not going to build this video on that, and I want to tell you why. It would not matter if he had been guilty. What the law required in the back of that van does not change either way. Here's what the law required. The moment a person is handcuffed and placed in a police vehicle, they cannot protect themselves. They cannot brace. They cannot put a hand out. They cannot buckle themselves in. Courts call that a special relationship. It comes out of a Supreme Court case called DeShaney, which is mostly famous for what the state does not owe you. The exception it carved out is custody, and the logic is exactly what you would expect. The duty does not come from the state feeling sorry for you. It comes from the state taking away your ability to act on your own behalf. The van Randy Cox was riding in had no seatbelt fastened around him. That van did not have working seatbelts in the back at all. His hands were cuffed behind his back. There was a metal partition in front of him. The officer driving, Oscar Diaz, was doing 36 in a 25. He hit the brakes hard to avoid another car. Randy Cox went head first into that partition, and then the van kept going.
All right, I'll get you an ambulance when we get there, okay? What do you mean, no? I'm not going to open the door now, so you know that, all right?
Cox starts saying it immediately. I can't move. He says it plainly, without drama, the way people do when something has genuinely gone wrong. Diaz keeps driving for almost 4 minutes before he stops the van and walks back there. And when he does, listen to what he says. He says he cannot move him. He says he is going to have to get an ambulance.
171.
171.
Can you start a signal 1? The subject in the van, he said he fell inside the van and he can't move. So I'm on my way to detention right now. So please, can you start me signal 1 over there?
So notice where we are. The man responsible for Randy Cox now understands that Randy Cox cannot move his own body. That knowledge is on the recording. Nobody has to infer it. And to his credit, Diaz calls for an ambulance. That call is real, and I am not going to pretend it is not.
I already called you for an ambulance, okay? Try not to move. I'm gonna go nice and easy. The ambulance on his way. Huh? You were standing up when you fell? I'm asking you, that you were standing up in the back when you fell? Huh?
But the van does not wait for the ambulance. The van goes to the police station. And this is the part one want you to sit with. When that van door opens, an ambulance is already on its way. Dispatch had been told to send it to that building. And instead of leaving a man with a suspected broken neck exactly where he is until the paramedics arrive, they spend those minutes processing him.
Listen, I got an ambulance coming for you, all right? Just give me 1 second. I'm taking you there right now.
No history.
All right, we made it. We made it here. We'll get you out of it in 2 seconds.
Roger, this is that man for the police.
They tell him to sit up. He tells them he cannot feel anything. They tell him to sit up again. They tell him he is drunk. They tell him he is not even trying. Then they take him out of that van by his feet and they move him into a holding cell.
Oh, you're sitting all awkward. Even if something hurt, sit upright.
If I could, I would.
Let me see. He has not. Yeah. You see? Don't get hurt up, guys. Here.
Did he move that leg or not?
Look at my hand. Over there. Oh, fuck that.
Move your leg.
Just roll it over to the side.
Listen, bro.
Sit up.
I can't move.
You're not even trying.
Let me be precise about why that is a legal problem and not just an ugly one. Under federal law, a person in custody has a constitutional right to medical care for a serious medical need. For someone who has not been convicted of anything, that comes out of the 14th Amendment. The standard is not perfection. The standard is that you cannot be indifferent to an obvious and serious medical emergency. A man saying he cannot move over and over after a head-first impact is not a close call. That is the textbook example. That is the fact pattern they teach.
If he really fell, and we're not even moving it till the end of the guest here, because just in case.
Okay. I cannot move.
Cox, either we can move you or you can wait till AMR moves you.
I cannot move. I cannot move.
Okay, do you want us to help you?
It ain't no thing on my leg. Listen.
What happened?
If I can't stay my leg, I cannot move.
Yeah, no.
I cannot move. I'm on one leg.
Just be careful. He was kicking the door and everything else before.
And there is a second layer that I do not think gets enough attention. The officers at that station did not cause the injury. They arrived after. But they were not bystanders either. Once Randy Cox was in their custody, every one of them had their own direct duty to get him medical care. Not a duty to feel bad. Not a duty to call a supervisor. Their own duty, personally, to each of them. Randy Cox was eventually taken to a hospital. He was paralyzed from the chest down. He is still paralyzed today.
Listen.
I'm not even joking about it.
Look,
You gotta get more by the shoulder.
Look,
All right.
turn your body.
You hurt me more.
No, I'm trying to turn your body.
Turn your body. You're not listening.
You're not even trying.
There we go. Turn your body. See?
Oh, shit. Hold on. That's
Okay, now stretch out.
Come on. Come on or we're going to pull you out.
Slide down, my man.
no G.
Yeah, slide down so you can get out of here.
Look. If you gotta drive me, do it start over.
All right.
Yep.
So let us talk about what the city did next, because the money tells you how bad the recording is. The city of New Haven settled with Randy Cox for $45 million, $30 million from the city's insurance, $15 million from the city itself. His attorneys called it the largest settlement in a police misconduct case in American history. For scale, the family of George Floyd settled with Minneapolis for $27 million. I want to sit on that number because I do not think people register where it lands. This channel has covered a $1.3 million settlement for a man slapped in a wheelchair, a $1.95 million settlement for a diabetic man tased on the side of the road, a handcuffed pregnant woman punched in a booking room whose lawyers put a $5 million number on the claim. Those are serious cases. $45 million is a different category entirely. Cities do not pay $45 million because they are generous. They pay it because their own lawyers watched that recording and understood exactly what a jury would do with it.
Sit up. What else did you have? Did you have a drug alcohol? You're not fine. How many did you have? Okay. How much did you have to drink? Huh? I'm asking, okay, but we're asking you now. We need to write that down for AMR purposes. Did you have a lot to drink? Any drugs? No. You feel like harming yourself?
Now, here's the part of this story that is going to stay with you, and it is the reason I wanted to cover this case at all. 5 officers were criminally charged, each one with second-degree reckless endangerment and with cruelty to persons, the negligent version of that statute. Both of those are misdemeanors in Connecticut. Not a felony among them for a man who went into custody walking and came out paralyzed. 2 of them, Betsy Segui and Ronald Presley, pleaded guilty to misdemeanor reckless endangerment. Neither received jail time, 60-day suspended sentences, 6 months of conditional discharge, and $15 each in court costs. The other 3, Oscar Diaz, Jocelyn Lavandier, and Luis Rivera, went in front of Judge David Zagaja in February of this year. He did not send them to trial. He granted them something Connecticut calls accelerated rehabilitation. And I want to be fair about what that actually is because you deserve the real version and not a cartoon. Accelerated rehabilitation is a diversion statute. It is not a trial and it is not an acquittal. To grant it, a judge has to find 2 things: that the offense was not of a serious nature and that the person is unlikely to offend again. It requires no guilty plea and no admission of anything, and when the person completes it, the charges come off the record entirely. And here's the part that complicates the outrage, so I'm going to give it to you straight. The prosecutors did not object. Randy Cox did not object either. So the criminal accounting for the largest police misconduct settlement in American history is 2 misdemeanor pleas with no jail and 3 sets of charges that get erased. Then there is the employment side, which somehow manages to be worse. The police commission fired Segui, Diaz, Lavandier, and Rivera. Presley retired before that commission could vote on the chief's recommendation to fire him. Segui appealed her firing and lost. Oscar Diaz, the officer who was driving the van, appealed his firing too. A panel split 2-1, replaced his termination with a 15-day unpaid suspension, and he was back at work in January of 2025 with back pay. And last week, so did Luis Rivera. A state arbitration panel ruled unanimously that the city never had just cause to fire him, and he was back on duty on July 27th. That makes 2 of the 4 fired officers reinstated. Segui's appeal was rejected. Lavandier has not gotten her job back either. And I am going to give you the arbitrator's reasoning because it is not nothing. They found that Rivera had almost no medical training, that he did not know the man was paralyzed, that the paramedics who eventually showed up did not identify the spinal injury either, and that Cox was genuinely intoxicated. That is a real argument about what one officer understood in that room. It is not an argument about whether a man who says he cannot move gets left on a cell floor until somebody decides to believe him. Now look at what that combination produces. The civil system looked at this and said $45 million. The criminal system looked at the same recording and said no prison. The arbitration system looked at it and put 2 of them back in uniform. Those are not 3 different sets of facts. That is one set of facts running through 3 systems, and only one of them is built to make anyone personally pay for it. That gap is not an accident. It is the design. A criminal standard that turns on what an officer was thinking. A diversion statute written for people who are unlikely to do it again. Arbitration rights and police union contracts that can put a fired officer back in uniform twice. And notice what is not on that list. Qualified immunity never decided anything here. This was a federal civil rights case, and federal qualified immunity was fully available to those officers. What Connecticut did in 2020 is narrower than most people think. It opened a state court claim where governmental immunity is not a defense, and then wrote a good faith exception into that same law. None of it mattered in the end because the city settled before any judge ruled on immunity at all. This outcome did not need qualified immunity. It got there anyway. So what actually protects you? First, understand what really saved this case. It was not a bystander with a phone. It was their own cameras. the camera inside that van, the body cameras they were wearing, and the station surveillance system. Equipment those officers knew was running, recording every second of them telling a man with a broken neck to sit up. Departments fought body cameras for years. This is exactly why they matter. Second, if you are ever in custody and you are hurt, say it clearly and say it more than once. Everything you say in that van and in that booking room is being recorded, and a lawyer can subpoena all of it later. Randy Cox saying, "I can't move" on tape over and over is the spine of a $45 million case. Third, if you are ever a witness to something like this, you are looking at the most valuable evidence that will ever exist in that case. Keep it, do not edit it, hand it to a lawyer. I have been on the other side of this. I know how fast a routine transport turns into the worst night of everyone's life, and I know that the officer driving that van almost certainly did not wake up that morning intending to paralyze anybody, but that was never the question. The question was what they all did in the minutes after a man told them over and over that he could not move. The city answered that question with $45 million. The courts answered it with no prison time. 2 of the officers are back at work. And Randy Cox answers it every single morning in a body that stopped below the chest in June of 2022. If this is the kind of breakdown you want more of, subscribe, because I go through one of these every week, and tell me in the comments what you think the right criminal outcome here would have been, because I genuinely do not think it is easy and I read every one.